Hello, Sam.
Hi, Bob. How you doing today, Bob?
Doing fine, doing fine. And yourself?
I'm doing
All right,
great,
what
but
do we
not
got?
as
We got a
great.
big one today, huh?
Oh yeah. We got a real big one. Like
All right,
one
what are
of
we
the
doing?
biggest fourth level spells. It's Conjure Minor Elementals. It's not minor in any way, shape, or form. The spell, it's a house. It's also in Sam's little books of spells I never want to DM for. It's very top of that list.
Yeah.
It is a lot.
So what, a lot of bookkeeping?
Yes. It's a lot of bookkeeping. It's a lot of power. It's a lot of research. It's a lot of prior work you have to do in addition to the work you're doing in the game. It's a lot of tracking, but it's also really fun. And I can't say no to my players when they ask. So yeah, it's something I just will eventually one day have to deal with, I'm sure.
It's funny. I don't see a lot of these. It's for druids and wizards. That's
Yeah.
a combination I don't see too often.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
got the
you see a lot
elemental
of the
theme.
druid sorcerer warlock kind of thing, and then there's the druid ranger. But yeah,
Mhm.
those two don't seem to mix too much. But this one they do.
Yep.
Druids
It's
and
prob
wizards.
it's probably slightly better as a druid spell because druids have, on average, in my opinion, worse spells, and this spell is really good. But I mean, it's great in both classes. You'll always be happy, regardless of who you are, to cast this spell. It's very good.
All right,
It's
well, let's jump into it. What elementals are we talking about here?
okay. So it hits for the viewers at home, for the listeners at home. It lets you summon 8 CR 1/4, or 4 CR 1/2, or 2 CR 1, or 1 CR 2. If you're ever casting the spell, unless you're using monsters outside of the ones that I know are available currently, like there's the ones in the player's handbook or monster manual, to my knowledge, are the only ones summonable with it right now. There's probably some in other books that I'm missing. You should never, ever, 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 ever cast this for anything above a CR 1/2, because one monster is substantially worse than 4 or 8.
Hmm.
The specific things you get, the best ones of them too just happen to be the CR 1/8 and 1/2. Summoning spells universally suffer from the CR system being an abysmal, horrendous method for gauging any kind of power. It is a disaster that doesn't take in context into account at all, which, to be fair, as a designer, as like making games is hard, and creating a system that's a catch-all is hard. So it's like they did their best, but it's bad. So the methods in particular break the game in a lot of ways that a DM just needs to be ready to handle if they're going to work with it. And they're the predominant ones you're going to be wanting. Magmen are also in the 1/2 category. Magmen are fine, but for the most part, the 6 methods we're looking at mud, steam, and smoke as our CR 1/8 options. They're often the best in my opinion. And then dust, ice, and magma as the last 6 for the CR 1/2 ones. You would consider these because they have interesting spells. And talking about it specifically gets even more and more complicated because of the wording of the spell and rulings of it. It's quite complex.
Uh, yeah. How do we want to do this? Do we want to go like monster by monster or what? What?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Here's where I'll start. If you are going to play with the spell, if you really like it, and it is really cool. I don't fault anyone for wanting to play with the spell. I personally really want to play with the spell, but I also just want to bookkeep it. It will behoove you to work with your DM to figure out if you want to have the burden of learning these monsters, or you want them to have the burden of learning these monsters. Because rules is written, you pick the CR, they pick the monster. So in most cases,
Oh.
this just default. Yeah, it's weird. It defaults to players always picking 1/8 because 1/8 can't get Magmen, and Magmen are notably worse than all the methods, and all the methods are very similar in power. But you can somewhat gauge the power of the spell and have more finite control over it if the DM decides versus if the player decides. I'm of the opinion I don't really want to have to track and manage and have all these stat blocks on hand all the time, so I would push it on the players and just let them have the more powerful. They get to pick the CR and the monster. Oh, pardon, in the CR category. So let's say you're a wizard casting this at 7th level, and you're like, all right, Conjure Minor Elementals, I want Steam methods. You just get Steam methods. Same as the DM goes, great, that's exactly what happens. Because I don't want to have to look up Steam methods, and I would just expect you to have it. That's where I would start with Conjure Minor Elementals. Talking about its power perspective, we can kind of group methods together, but they all do some things slightly differently, and they're good in a whole suite of scenarios. For the most part, they're all going to have some form of breath weapon, and this is why they are such a gigantic pain to track. Because each one of them, if let's say Bob, we're in this lovely example where you summon 8 magma methods, right? Or sorry, 8
Okay.
mud methods. All right.
Mud methods.
You want them all to use their breath weapon because their breath weapon can stick things into the ground. It does a bunch of damage. It seems sweet. Now you have to track 8 instances of recharge 6, which means at the beginning of every turn, you're going to roll a d6. And if it's a 6, they get that resource back. And you have to do that for all 8 of the methods that you're now in independent control of. In addition, you have to track all of their hit points. You have to track where they're all located at, any conditions that affect them, such as slows, sleeps, fears, things like that. And that's now all taken into account as well. And you're just fundamentally handling 8 more creatures and all of the garbage that comes with that. Now, if we go to the CR1/4 monsters, each one of those have spells. Each one of them gets their own unique, relatively useful spell, like Fog Cloud, for example, where each of them can cast it once in a specific duration of time. You would need to track every instance alongside their recharge mechanic they also have. You also have to track all of their spell casting. It's a lot, especially for a 4th level spell. And the power it gives you is very, very high. At the same time, it is so much work that it is hard for me to justify doing.
Sounds like this would behoove you to be a very organized person to cast this.
Yes. Have books ready, have the monster stat blocks on hand, have a giant notepad that you can list all of them down in, color code them if they're on a battle map so you know which one is which, because you're going to have 8 of them to manage in a lot of instances. And if the encounter goes more than a few rounds, that recharge starts to matter a lot. So
this spell goes on for an hour as well. If
it does.
It's concentration.
Yep. If you're DMing this and you let the methods live longer than a single round, shame on you. Kill them quickly, because if they get 3 or 4 encounters with them, they're breaking the encounters in half. Like, they're putting out damage output. So let's look, for example, at just the lovely little steam methods. All right, steam methods, you summon 8 of them. 8 of them get to make an attack every turn. If half of those attacks hits, if a quarter of those attacks hits, they each do 2d4 damage, which means you're getting 44 damage a round off of just the steam methods for existing. On top of that, if they die, they also do a d8 damage around them. So you're guaranteed to get some output out of them, and this is every round for an hour. Yeah. So we're talking really good damage numbers that are very fun to control and very fun to have around, alongside just having minions to come in to do your bidding for that hour. Beyond combat, this is just 8 extra familiars you can send off to do your bidding. You give them verbal commands, not mental. That's a big note. You can't control them with your mind. You have to say words to them. But once you give them the words, they will go do the things. And you can have them navigate the world in really complex ways, where you have 8 little errand creatures running around navigating a city, picking up goods for you. You can have a bunch of spies covering 6 different entrances of a building you're trying to get into, and they can fly back to you as little runners whenever things start to go south. Incredibly high utility. Mud methods are one of my favorites for this, because mud methods have, they can basically look like mud with their false appearance. They can kind of be settling into the dirt, listening in on things, and the moment they say something that you told them to see, they can just back to you with that sound effect. If you're at the end, use the sound effect. Players love it. But yeah, then you have a ton of utility there as well. Like, this spell is very powerful, and you're doing good damage with it, even in the instances where they're not hitting that often, but they're hitting enough that it's high damage per round and it lasts a while. Oh, it is powerful, and it's a lot to manage, but it is I have such a hard time saying you should try it, because it is so much.
Yeah, this is nuts for a 4th level spell. I mean, 4th level, you're kind of getting up there, but I mean, still, there's 5 levels of spells above that, and this feels like a big one.
Yeah, I mean, you can compare it to things like Fireball. You can compare it to a lot of different just damaging spells. It doesn't take a lot of rounds and a lot of luck for this to succeed. It helps that because when you make 8 attacks, you're critting a whole lot more than you normally would. And when things like Steam methods crit, they're doing 44 damage instead of 2d4 damage, because their dice is attached to their damage, which is really good. If we look at their breath weapons, you can just stack them all in a pile and have them all let out their breath weapon at once for what's functionally a upcast Burning Hands that you can just do every minute-ish, sometimes more frequently, sometimes slightly less frequently. It is genuinely very powerful. We can quickly touch on the options you shouldn't take and why you shouldn't take them if you'd like, because there are some real stinkers that you could choose to do in this spell.
Yeah, I'm picturing these. One more thing though.
Sure.
All right, you got your 8 steam methods,
right?
But they're going out and tangling with the baddies or your foes, so you can kind of hang back, and this isn't one of those. Your concentration is continually threatened, like some other spells. It's pretty good that way. You can stay out of danger.
If you're creating 8 separate things to annoy and like stop your foes from getting to you, the odds of concentration dropping go down substantially. And especially it's in two classes that are very good at maintaining concentration. Both Wizard and Druid have a pretty good time at staying safe. With Wizard, even Misty step into a high tree somewhere and just let them run loose, just let them do their thing, and that's like causing a bunch of havoc, damage, and impact on an encounter without you ever being in danger. You can do some pretty powerful things with these, and again, like you just said, it defends your concentration. It's quite good at that.
All right, well, let's go on and talk about the crappier ones.
Oh, there are a lot of crap ones. When I say crap ones, I should also put an asterisk here. Almost all summoning magic is very, very good. Even if you're DMing and you're like, God, I don't want to track 8 of these things, can you just not take the CR 1/4 or 1/8? Or sorry, the CR 1/4 ones. Just take something that gives you less of them. I don't have to deal with it. It'll still be decent. It'll be fine. Aether are the only CR2, or sorry, Aether and Gargoyles are the only CR2, so they're the ones you get one of. They are not great. Having one monster instead of 8, the immediate utility is just tanks, just way down the toilet. Aether really only hit things, and they have a high AC. That's kind of the only thing they have going for them. They punch things, and they're hard to hit. That is not tremendously valuable whenever you're comparing it to the 8 attacks you're missing from the methods, with the breaths, with the spells, with the everything else those things give you. You don't really want those. It doesn't have Death Burst, nothing all that interesting. It's got Flame Weapons, so it does like an extra D6, but damage-wise, you're pitifully in the floor. Again, it's a whole extra combatant. It's whole extra actions. You can command it to do other important things in combat, like grappling and things like that. So if you want to play the spell and don't want to necessarily have to track it, this might be a direction you could consider doing and still be like, all right, it's probably not worth the 4th level slot, but it's fulfilling that fantasy I want, and I don't have to like get a PhD to understand it. Whereas Gargoyles are a little bit better than Aether. It's fairly moot. The fly speed helps. Their false appearance helps, so you can like situate them on top of a tower somewhere to keep watch over a large area, and then have them fly to you whenever something spooky happens. You're probably better off with just Mephits doing that anyway. Mud Mephits are mud. That's a lot less conspicuous than a large stone creature, but you know, you can get some mileage out of it.
If you're playing Dungeons and Dragons and you see a statue with wings, it's a gargoyle.
It's a gargoyle. I don't know what else to tell you. Just it is. Even if you're the players and you're like, oh hey, look at that winged statue, that's definitely a gargoyle. If it wasn't before, it certainly is now, because that's just how DMing works. The other options you can get are fire snakes. You can get 2 fire snakes. They're bad. They're not great. They have a little bit of hit points. They get some decent fire hit attacks. Again, they don't come with the reason the Mephits and even the Magma to some extent are so good is you get a lot of them, and they have more than just the attacks. And all fire snakes are attacks, and that's not as good as the lower CR versions. All the lower CR versions aren't that much less damage per hit, offer over double the amount of hits, have more instances of critting, have more utility, all have some kind of interesting, unique way to interact with the world. There's just so little reason to ever try the other ones that I wouldn't do it. But again, maybe you don't want to track it all.
Yeah, but I mean, then don't cast the spell. That's,
honestly.
If I want to use this, I want to get the most out of it. I want a bunch of little steam Mephits or mud Mephits running around doing my bidding.
I should say like Ice, Magma, and Dust, or Dust Mephits are all good in the right where you'll want them specifically when you want their spells. So Magma Mephits, for example, I believe get Heat Metal, which if you want 4 extra uses of Heat Metal, this is the way to do it.
Ooh, I do. I like Heat Metal. Yeah,
if you like Heat Metal, this is just 4 more uses of Heat Metal, which is quite good. Granted, the CR is not, or the DC is not that high for using it, but it's still just 4 extra uses of it. That's always going to be great. Yeah. They also, I probably shouldn't put this little caveat here. The upper CR Mephits have the ability to summon more Mephits. That doesn't work because it says lots of lines about summoners and things like that. I'm pretty sure, at least as a DM, I'd be like, all right, this applies here. You are the one who summoned the Mephits. They cannot summon more Mephits. If they can summon more Mephits, if you're in the situation where you're like, yeah, why not? What's the worst that can happen? If you thought bookkeeping just 8 of them was nuts, just imagine if each one of them gets 4 of their own, then you're dealing with 16 CR 1/8 Mephits and 4. Don't even worry about it. I'm confident it doesn't work anyway. It's a variant. It's fine. Just pretend it's not a variant. Pretend it's not there. Don't worry about it. Don't think about it too hard.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah, it's pretty busted. The other thing to note is I believe Dust Mephits get a blinding breath. So their breath weapon isn't damage based, but it's a blind, which If you want 4 instances, I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's one of the CR1 half. If you want 4 instances of Area of Effect Blind, which is really good, yeah, you can take Dust Methods. They're great in that situation. They're going to do less damage than the other ones, but you have 4 15-foot cone blinds that recharge on 6. So that's useful. It's really hard to talk about the spell because of the sheer quantity of things it can do. There aren't a lot of spells in this game, save like Conjure Elemental and Wish and like the big upper CR, Summoning Magic, the big upper CR, super flexible stuff that do as much as this does, just because Mephits do so many different things. And all of them have Death Burst. So worst case scenario, you summon them all in, they get 1 round of attacks, and then they explode. And that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's like the floor of this spell.
Right. Yeah, that's all right. Well, what's the SAM rating for Conjure Minor Elementals?
This is a 5 out of 5 from a power perspective. This is a spell that warps the game around it. You have to, if you're a DM that has a player running this, the game changes dramatically with its existence. It's like Conjure Animals in this way, where it's like, yeah, the CR system clearly doesn't work, and this spell is really busted because of it. I would recommend and advocate, because the spell is so powerful, adjusting it slightly, ways to make the bookkeeping less annoying, ways to make like something you can even do is just make all the Mephits HP 1. That's a really easy way to do it, so you don't have to track HP alongside the other things. That's a nice little clean. It doesn't affect the power of the spell that much. I would recommend adjusting the spell if you want to play with that at the table. If you're down to adjust these kind of things and work with your DM on it, it is that powerful of a spell. But if you don't want the adjustments, if your DM does like, nah, we're playing everything rules as written, this spell is very good, and they will have to account for it every time they make an encounter.
All right. Well, that's Conjure Minor Elementals. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Yeah.
And I'll see you next time, Sam. Yep.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it. A gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.